Hello and welcome to this week's Glasstire Top 5. It is the week of December 17th, 2020. I am Brandon Seck and we're here with two very special guests. This actually isn't a traditional top 5. It's not even necessarily a top 5. It's almost a folk art environment inspired top 11, but you got Ghosts of Christmas Past, Present, and Future. So with that, our guests, welcome Julie Webb and Bruce Webb of Webb Gallery from Waxahachie.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank y'all for joining us. And y'all want to take a second and just say who you are? I mean, you're folk art people extraordinary. We tapped you for this because your knowledge about folk art environments in Texas is far surpasses my own.
There are a lot of more people out there who know quite a bit about folk art environments. We have Webb Gallery up in Waxahachie, have had it for 33 plus years, and started with the love of folk art, and it's gone from there and following those aesthetics all the way through.
Lots of road trips, and that's what we were hoping to do, is share some of the road trip ideas that you might not have thought of going on with you, and go out and see some interesting art by the roadside.
Especially these days, outdoor driving seems to be a good idea.
Outdoor art is is always a good way to go. And so we're gonna, some of these are in Texas's major cities. Some of them are kind of around or outside of Texas's major cities. So if you're driving home for Christmas, or if you just want to, go on a trip for a couple hours, all of these are pretty accessible, or at least the ones that are still around.
There are a few websites that are great for this. There's Spaces and Narrow Larry, Atlas Obscura. So if you're traveling, they are lots of places in the country and internationally. So
you may discover another environment that is incredible. So
yeah, make your own discoveries.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Once you know what to look for.
Oh yeah, these things are everywhere. I know. Whenever I've been, driving around Texas for Glasstire, I've occasionally stopped and just been like, "What is this place?" And you can't find any information about it. You just kind of got to take it at what it is, which is always a.
Well, they were created as people magnets primarily for various reasons. It draws to create them, but it's artists living on the outside trying to draw everybody else on the inside.
Let's jump in. So we're going to start with the Ghost of Christmas Past, which are 5 art environments that aren't around anymore for myriad reasons. So what's your number 5?
Number 5 is Willard Watson, the Texas Kids Art Yard. The kid was a pretty well-known Dallas artist. He lived in a little house close to Love Field Airport, and so a lot of celebrities would come and visit him, and his house was featured in David Byrne's movie True Stories. Pop Staples does an incredible scene where he's singing and performing in the kid's house. But out in the yard were all kinds of found objects and sculptures, and it was really an amazing place when you could see it. There's photographs of it today. But, number 4 is Beatrice Jimenez. Her cement menagerie of animals and 2-headed dogs and figures was in Floresville, just south of San Antonio. And there's still a few vestiges of the environment that are there.
We have a great one in Webb Gallery. If you visit sometime, we'll show it to you. It looks kind of like E.T., but it was pre-E.T.
See, number 3, up in North Texas, Ray's in ornamental garden that once existed in Stephenville, Texas. Ray had quite a tourist attraction. He started working on the environment in the 1930s. And then by the 40s, he had postcards and he had souvenir items that he would sell to people on the roadside. There's a couple of websites about Ray's ornamental gardens, and you can see some of the ephemera that people have collected over the years. But probably one of the most elaborate art environments in North Texas, a lot of cement elements that were brightly painted and hand-painted signs and things of that nature.
Very, not that these other spaces aren't, but it was very produced and kind of thought out, and it was made so that you didn't see the tricks that were happening.
It was like the early theme park idea of building something.
He had put a lot of thought into it, and I think he had kind of started his own religion. He published a book with his Ray-isms.
The artist Martin Delabano, he and his family used to visit Ray's, and he's written quite a bit that you can find on the internet about his personal visits as a kid.
Number two,
Yeah.
down to Houston, Texas, Cleveland Turner, his environment around his house, he was known as the Flower Man.
Yeah.
Attracted a lot of attention, and we got to meet Cleveland in the 90s. He really was one of those artists that it was like a living flower garden while he was working on it. But then after he passed away, it's really started to disappear quickly. But that's another environment that you can see great photographs of the environment. I know in the Spirited Journeys folk art exhibition that UT did in '96, there's some great photos of it.
I actually remember the day that space was torn down. Project Row House in Houston's 3rd Ward, which was more or less just up the street from the Flower Man's house. They kind of tried to save it. It's so hard for some of these organizations to bring on an entire separate property that has like all of its own problems. Like you can save a portion of it or you can save a little bit, but with something like Cleveland Turner's house, it's like there's no good way to capture something except in photographs of just capturing the whole environment itself.
Another thing is it's almost like seeing live music. You have to put forth the effort to get to some of these art pieces, and you kind of become one with experience it, and each day it's going to be a little different. And so I think that's also one of the things. It's like you have to put forth the effort to get to some of these sites. Mm-hmm. And it's always worth it to me because the great memories that I've had from visiting some of the sites and to meet the artists that created them.
It's true. Some can be preserved, but they're never the same when the artist is no longer around.
So what's your number one Ghost of Christmas Past?
Number one Ghost of Christmas Past is an environment that we got to be a participant in enjoying it for about a year or two, and it was Australia Glen. Her environment was called the Blue House near Fair Park in Dallas. It was on Penelope Street. And we were visiting Reverend Hunter one day, and one of his church members told us about this house. And so we started to visit Australia. And it took us a couple of visits before she let us in the backyard, which was even more filled with sculptures. But basically, she painted everything blue. And she took all kinds of plastic elements and wood elements and wired them together, and then would paint it in multiple thick coats of blue paint. So almost like a Louise Nevelson, but with like all kinds of
blue
objects below that are plastic and brick and rock. And she really had an incredible environment for a number of years.
She cared for her husband inside, and she, like Bruce said, she did let us in after a couple of visits just to kind of give a tour. Mm-hmm. But then afterwards, we took Ted Degner, a photographer of art environments, over, and she would not welcome him. And she kind of slowly just backed away after that one time. So it got to be a thing where we could only really drive by and leave things on her porch for her. But it was very much a private land, even though it was so incredibly public in this blue. It was a really incredible place.
And this is really just a drop in the bucket. These 5 that don't exist anymore, because there are many others that no longer exist.
It was hard to find 5 and stop there.
Those are Christmas Past. So those are the ones that we can't,
on the interweb only.
Yeah, we can't visit anymore. So if you're driving through Texas, this list of Christmas present are going to be the ones that you can actually hit up. So what's your number 5 for this?
Dionisio Rodriguez, the Arbor Bridge in Breckenridge Park in San Antonio. It was built in 1926, still standing, so beautiful. It looks so much like tree trunks, but it's all concrete. He came from Mexico. He was born in the late 1800s, settled in San Antonio, his family did, and he started this craft with this secret potion that he came up with that would color the concrete to make it look like a tree. And they're beautiful. There's a lot of them actually of his pieces in Breckenridge Park, but the bridge in particular is amazing. So that's definitely a must visit, and it's a great outdoor. The park itself is beautiful. So
seems like there's a tradition in San Antonio of the faux bois sculptors who work with the cement. And we met another man named Sam Murray who was a competitor of Mr. Rodriguez, and he said that they would use antifreeze and then buckets of rusty water made by soaking old nails in the water to hydrate the cement. And it wasn't until both of the men were in their 80s that they realized they had a lot of the same secrets, but they'd kind of kept them apart. And then Beatrice Jimenez also, she was part of that same tradition too. So San Antonio really has the amazing cement sculptors.
Well, and about this pick, it's so interesting. I feel like a lot of the folk art environments traditionally end up being like private residences or things you just kind of have to, you know, drive by or hope that the person's there or that. But to have this one that's like in a public park, relatively accessible, it's nice to have one like that on this list and to have one like that in Texas. So what's number 4?
4 is our friend and fellow Glasstire artist, Andy Don Emmons. Andy Don and his wife have recently moved to Waxahachie. We've known Andy for a long time. When he lived in Huntsville, he had an art environment that he had made, and he has really, since he's been in Waxahachie, I guess nearly a year now, it has blossomed. It's unbelievable what he's been putting together and moving old pieces from his farm, building more pieces. He calls it the Marvin Gardens Art Yard. And he's got his studio there in this old barn. We keep going by there and standing out on the porch talking to each other, and we've been really impressed with what he's put together. I know he would welcome if people were coming through Waxahachie to make an appointment to see it. It's all in this. They have like 2 acres behind their house, so it's a big place. It's beautiful, the things he's doing. We've really been impressed with it. We like it.
Well, and if he's only been out there a year at this point and he's already done this much, I can't imagine what it's going to be like, 5 years from now.
It has everything about what an art environment encompasses. It's the joy, it's the outside sculpture, it's that drive to create that he can't get away from, making it out of anything. So, yeah, it's a good one.
What's number 3?
Well, it's as a Glasstire participant and supporter, it's the obvious, the Orange Show and the Beer Can House. And we lump them together because they are part of the same umbrella organization that upkeeps them. But the Orange Show, obviously by Jeff McKissick, was started in about 1968, 69, all about the health benefits of the oranges. If you haven't been to that one, it's incredible. It's maintained. I know it's kind of sad that right now they haven't been utilizing it for some of the outdoor concerts and things that they had previously, but it blows me away every time we go see it. And I've seen it a handful or more of times, and I'm never unimpressed. It is spectacular.
When it's in its prime, it's able to host people, and it's this fantastic gathering space that's also maze-like that, when it's filled with people, you can't quite figure out what's going on, which is kind of perfect.
And the Beer Can House, it's just spectacular. It's a giant disco ball of architecture. And
got the health benefits of beer, right?
How can you not love that? That one was done by Mr. MILKOVICH.
He started on it in the 60s.
I know his original neighborhood was a lot different than it is now, but there's something kind of joyful about the surrealism of that house with all the modern condos around it too. It's like this test of time that's still standing. I love that. That's a must see. And if you're in Houston, you can so easily do both of them.
I don't know, on revisiting several of these sites, it's always fun to go back if maybe you'd seen them a few years ago. It's time you get out and see it again.
Yeah.
Can't see them too many times. Number 2 is Vince Hanneman's Cathedral of Junk in Austin. It was started in about 1988. and he's still working on it as far as I know. I didn't have a chance to contact him prior to this and find out how he was handling the current climate, but it had been if you made an appointment. It is outdoors, so I don't know if he's accepting appointments. It's incredible, all the amount of tonnage of stuff that he has put together and how he has continued to build it and have faith in it, because like sometimes his neighbors have said, oh no, you're not going to do that 60-foot pile of televisions anymore. And
Well, I think for cities, they don't know how to approach an art yard or art environment, and so a lot of times it has to come to the city council where somebody says, hey, this is art, it needs to be protected.
And he has a website, and it's found on, there's Atlas Obscura, and there's Spaces, and Larry Harris's website, Narrow Larry. Any of these three are so good at leading you to contact the person to make a appointment too.
The documentation can be a little lax, or the way to find more information, but any of these spaces that are still around like this, there's just a wealth of photos and visitor posts. And
number one is the Sugar House, Casa de AZÚCAR in El Paso. Mr. Rivas, he was born in 1933, so I'm not sure. I did not find whether he was still he hasn't currently been working on it, but he has been maintaining it for a lot of years. I don't know the state of his health. It is still incredible and preserved as of now. It looks like sugar houses, sugar plum fairies, very Christmassy, but in this El Paso Mexican style. You want to think that he used to make candy and then it just exploded all over the house. He built it as a monument to El Paso. He loved his town, and he worked on it for I'm sure he still maintains it, but the building of it was nearly 20 years in the working. It's one of those that, because he's older, you don't know how long it will still be there and what its future will be, but it is incredible. It's one of the ones that is a parallel or rivals any of the art environments we've had or have in Texas. So
we were talking about the sites that don't exist anymore, the ones that do exist, and I was going to mention the Kohler Art Center in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, kind of has done more than anyone in the U.S. to preserve these sites, and usually they gift them to a local entity that takes care of them. But several of these sites, had they been able to see that kind of help, they might still be around.
They maintain the Spaces archive.
Yeah, that's a wonderful website. It's just spacesarchives.org, and it's a way you can search for art environments around you. It kind of has everything from people that have just almost had like ornamental lawns, to the Orange Show, to the Sugar House, to everything else.
Oh yeah, we took a trip just last year to Spain and used that website and the founder expertise in visiting sites in Spain. So it is very valuable.
Okay, so do we have one more? Do we have a Christmas future?
The Christmas future.
We have the Christmas future, and something that you don't think of is the rock art. And the in Texas, we have the Pecos Valley rock art that is just incredible. And there's an organization down in that region called Shumla that do trips, they do tours, they do ongoing study. And we have met incredible scholars of art and folk art who have come internationally from various places to Texas just to see this Pecos Valley rock art. So that one's kind of the past, present, future all together. And
well, one reason it's the future is that sometimes, the river goes down and new discoveries are made. Yeah. So who knows what we haven't even seen yet.
Well, and if you want to read more about that, I was actually kind of first introduced to that. Gene Fowler, one of our writers who I know y'all know and who we love at Glasstire, he wrote a piece, I think back in 2017 for us about the Lower Pecos rock art. And it's, these glyphs are like more than 4,500 years old, considering it's in Texas and considering how old they are. They're in really great condition, a lot of them, and they're fascinating. They're wonderful. This is a mammoth, fantastic list. Thank y'all for coming on and sharing this with us, and
You're welcome.
I'm excited to get to some of these that I haven't been to before. You know?
And make some new discoveries.
Yes.
Yeah. Use that Spaces archive. Once I found out about that a couple of years ago, I just kind of started going.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all, and
Thank
to
you.
those of you watching and listening, go see some art or go see some
Go
spaces.
see some art.
Yeah.